This episode contains sensitive content. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Culture Podcast, where we uncover the hidden mechanics of high control groups, their tactics, and their impact. And we speak with the survivors who broke free. My name is Derek, and I'm your host.
My name is Trinity, and I'm also your host. On this podcast, we explore cult life as real people who have lived through the life-changing process of leaving a high control group.
All right. Welcome back to the podcast. So today we're actually doing a solo conversation. I'm here with an old friend of mine, Erika. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure to have you. We haven't spoken in quite a few years. And so it's going to be great to catch up with you and just kind of see where you are at in life and what's been going on since post Jehovah's Witness. So you did grow up at Jehovah's Witness. And I think right now you're kind of at a different phase in life, and I'm really looking forward to chatting about where you're at spiritually and kind of where you're at post leaving the JWs. But just wanted to start out, with just a question like, how are you feeling about sharing your story today?
Yeah, I feel really good about it. I think that it's all of our stories are important and they all matter. And if it can help somebody or if it's just interesting to listen to, minus my voice, sorry everybody. I don't have a great speaking voice. It's going to be annoying, but here we are.
I think it's fine. We can blame your iPhone.
Perfect.
So as mentioned, you grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. What was your childhood like growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
For me, it was really good. I don't have a lot of the trauma that I feel like a lot of people have experienced so far that I listened to on your podcast or in general. My parents were awesome, loving. Yeah, it was really, I really don't have much to say about my childhood except for that it was a really, really good childhood.
Yeah, that's something we do bring up from time to time is, when we chat with someone, there's always a little bit of mixture of like, some things were really good, like me personally, and I know Trent when he was chatting, enjoyed a lot about, the structure, learning to kind of speak on the platform. There was certain things where it's like, yeah, like things are great. I think young childhood, I don't think you fully realize, something's maybe off until you start getting older and you're starting to kind of develop into your true self.
That part for me is not true though. I
Oh,
I did always feel like something was off. So when I say my childhood was really good, it was really good in that I had great parents
yeah.
and like great family. But the Kingdom Hall is always where I felt uncomfortable. Always. I always felt like a black sheep. I always felt like I didn't belong there. I just hated going, like it wasn't fun for me ever. I didn't ever like getting on the platform. I didn't ever like answering. It was, something that we were made to do. So I hated service. Um,
And this is from 4, 5, 6 years old. Like,
yeah, like, again, I guess that, yeah, and yeah, what you're going and you're sitting and whatever, you play with your friends afterwards. But I would say, like, pre even puberty, which is, when you kind of go nuts. Yeah, it was just like, I always dreaded kind of going to the Kingdom Hall and sitting there.
did
And
you find at least like as a child or a teenager or a preteen, like did you find people to connect with at least? And
no, never.
never. Okay.
And that's where it was very I had to be and I still am really good at being alone because I didn't really connect with anybody in the congregation. I did connect with some people, but it was mostly older people
Yeah.
that obviously you felt some sort of connection with, but hardly ever anybody my age. And then I wasn't allowed to be friends with the people I did connect with in school and obviously hang out or anything with them. So it was just like a lot of alone time or time with Kristen, my best friend. It was like just mostly me and her doing our thing a lot. But no, I never had a lot of friends in the organization and I didn't have friends outside of the organization. So I just had to really like myself and being alone.
But you did end up actually getting baptized.
I did. I got baptized when I was 17, which is late for a witness. And it really what boiled down to. I mean, I was trying to embrace it and be a part of it, but really, what it boiled down to for me is that my dad was an elder, and I felt really bad that he was the only elder that I knew that had a kid my age that wasn't baptized. So
Mm.
I really kind of did it for him. I was like, must really suck that I've held on this long. So, I did it, but it's wild. I remember thinking as I was doing it, how long before I get disfellowshipped?
Spoiler alert, only a few years. So it's so interesting because I don't know, it just seems like a lot of people we chat with, the whole thing is like, oh, you made this personal dedication to Jehovah, you answer these questions, you pray about it. This is a, washing of the sins, and then you finally, plunge yourself or get plunged, and then you rise from the water, and you just feel the Holy Spirit. And it just seems like everyone I talk to is like, nah, I was kind of like pressured, or I felt like I needed to fit in. I don't feel like anyone genuinely gets the experience that we're supposed to be getting.
Yeah, but I'm super right.
Yeah, I genuinely feel like it's a peer pressure thing. It's we want to please our parents, because I also was 17, and I just remember thinking, if I don't do this now, I may not get baptized, because I knew I was also getting kicked out soon.
Hmm.
And I say kicked out, there was a plan for me. I graduated high school already at 17, not because I was smart. Don't worry about that. It just a timing, age thing. And there was kind of a plan for me to go to DeVry Institute of Technology and live with my brother. And I just remember looking at the timing of things, and I'm like, I do want to do this for my father.
Hmm.
And if I leave and go down to Phoenix from Flagstaff, I just may not get baptized, so I better do it before I leave.
Mm,
And I don't
interesting.
remember, yeah, I don't remember any personal dedication to God at all.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So you get baptized at 17.
Hmm.
Was it at one of these kind of big convention halls? Was it at a small assembly hall?
It was at yeah, it was at one of the assembly halls, I think. I don't know. I have a terrible memory, but yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't at like a big convention. I know that. I think it was like just one of our 2-day assemblies or
Yeah.
whatever.
That's also
Yeah.
another funny thing, is we're always supposed to remember our baptism date. It's such a special day. It's that and your
Yeah.
wedding. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
dude, I don't remember. Mine
Yeah.
was also, but it was at my high school. So
Oh.
it was literally like Friday or whatever. I got out of school, and then like the next day I went back to school dressed up and got plunged.
So they had the assembly at your high school?
Hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because it was up in Flagstaff, and Flagstaff, just being a little bit smaller, they just didn't have a lot of assembly halls there. So they'd rented out kind of
Mm.
the little place there at the school where they do their little plays and
Mhm.
all that stuff. So yeah, and I remember forgetting the date, and then I just made up a date, April 15th, 99. Yeah, because if people ask you,
Uh-huh.
I just remember thinking like, oh, I need to have some
Uh-huh.
date. Uh, but I knew it was 99 because I graduated high school in 99.
Uh-huh.
That's all I got. So navigate me through 17 to, I don't know, like the next few years. So you're baptized now, you're starting to get the zeal, you're preaching, you love Jehovah.
No, no. No, I started dating David at 17, so shortly after, and then I was married the next year. I was married at 18. So then it was just married life, and neither of us, to be honest, were ever spiritual when we were in it. Not that we both didn't try at certain points, but at that point too, I was on some heavy medication because I had like anxiety, and they put me on this crazy stuff. So like for the first couple years of our marriage, I would say until like 21, I don't really remember a whole lot. I just know we were kind of wild. We were partying, but we were still going to meetings, kind of. And then I got disfellowshipped, as I knew I would.
So So you're basically from early on are living kind of a double life.
You know, this is one thing that my dad always told me that he appreciated about me. I mean, yeah, at that time for sure, because we weren't like obviously going to the hall and being like, let's party, everybody. But even when I was really young and really rebellious and not wanting to go to meetings, I'd say like 13, 14, and I would tell my dad this and, be doing stuff that I wasn't supposed to be doing or whatever. I would just be really honest with him. And, of course he would cry and my mom would cry and they'd be like, well, don't you want to live in the new world? And I would just tell them, you know, yeah, I mean, yes, but also it's more important to me right now to live my life and to be authentic and to do what I want to do. And so my dad always told me, I appreciate that you are honest with me
Yeah.
and that you don't really lead a double life.
Mm,
Like you're just being straight up that this is not what you want to do. I'm making you go to meetings, I'm making you do all this stuff, but I know that you don't want to. And I'd be like, yeah, you're right, I don't. So I don't think there was a whole lot of secrets ever, like as far as that went. It was, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and I'm sorry, I don't want to hurt you.
yeah.
But yeah.
It's interesting because from an outward appearance, knowing you, years ago when you were married to David, I guess there's a weird pull where it's like if you just didn't really believe and weren't really, why do you keep getting dressed up Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday and going through this shit?
Yeah, good question. I would say that there was a lot of times we didn't. I feel like there was a obviously when we were partying and stuff, we didn't really go to meetings that much. And then when I got reinstated, and the only reason I got reinstated was my parents came to my door one day because they had zero contact with me, obviously. And, basically just said, we want you back. And we're crying. And they said, and a certain brother told us, that we were allowed to come here to your door and tell you this, like they had to get approval or whatever.
Mm,
Um, and so I decided to come back. But I remember telling David that whole time that I wish I could just serve God on my own. I really don't want to go back. I wish I could just do this
yeah.
my own way, how I want to do it. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I didn't have any other spiritual knowledge or what exactly that meant for me, but I knew that I dreaded having to go back to the Kingdom Hall and do small talk and be fake and that whole thing. But I did. That's how I met you.
Man, you were fake with me every time. That's so hilarious. Yeah, it's interesting. I think that's a common thread that also we talk about a lot on the podcast, and just with people that I've known over the years. Gosh, that pull of the shunning and not speaking with your family, not speaking with your loved ones.
Yeah.
It's
The family's the biggest part. For me, it was.
it's so powerful,
Yeah.
and so that you wanted to see your parents again, your family. And so they kind of forced your hand. What was the process to get back? Was it long? Was it easy? Like, do you remember that?
So we started going to that hall that we met you at. So we switched halls, and then I don't think I don't know. It took a few months because I wasn't going to meetings the whole time I was disfellowshipped. And then when I decided, okay, I'm going to come back, and I wrote my letter or whatever. Yeah, a few months I would say. And I know you guys talked about Gil with Trent. So Gil was a big part of that. Gil knew David growing up. So David had known Gil his whole life. I didn't. I had never met Gil before, but so he was really on my side. He wanted me back, so I feel like that it happened pretty quickly for me to come back.
It's really interesting. I remember your Gil connection from an outside looking in. You and David seemed to really love Gil.
Yeah, I mean, he was always, and even me and Gil after me and David split up. Gil would check on me all the time, and obviously, when I first moved out here, I was going to meetings with my parents, and he would check in. And me and him still had contact for a few months, I would say, after I moved out here. And then it just fizzled out as because I fizzled out shortly after I got here.
Yeah. Do you know the Gil story, like my Gil story?
I have no idea. No. Yeah.
So this might be a good time to bring it up because we did tease it on Gork's interview.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
So here we go. So
Okay.
Um, so when I my first marriage, I lived in San Francisco and separated with Valerie, my first wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved back to Arizona to try to restart things and try to get back in line. I felt like, oh, because when I lived out in San Francisco, I was inactive. And Valerie pretty much wanted to just do her thing. She was very much like a beatnik, Jack Kerouac, want to just party and do whatever. And I always just kind of was in the middle. I wasn't really going, but I wasn't really doing anything. And we just fell apart. Was smoking and partying and hanging out. And it got to the point where with Valerie, we were just kind of roommates.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was really sad. I was just like, hey, can I come
Mm-hmm.
and like hang out with your friends that you're making and whatever? And she's like, nah, we're kind of doing our thing. And it's just like, I don't even have a life out here.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got to a point where she was just like, she just wouldn't come home.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, where are you? Like, yeah, it's just like, it's just wild. Like,
Uh-huh.
it was really weird. And I was 23, 22.
Mm-hmm.
Because as mentioned, witnesses love to get married super young because we want to have sex.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up separating. I moved back to Arizona. We were still married. But then she eventually, with witnesses, you have to have a spiritual, like, you have to have like a reason for divorce. Unlike, there's everyone else, you can just, get divorced. But with the witnesses, you have to have a reason, and it's usually fornication.
Yeah.
And so we got divorced, but I didn't have that. So even though I was legally divorced, I was not scripturally free to remarry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a weird concept for people that maybe are listening. And so I talked with Gil
Mm-hmm.
and took him aside and told him what was going on. And hey, I want to work towards getting scripturally free. And he basically kept working with me to try to make that happen. And what had happened with Gil is he kept needing many things. He needed it's so wild because he needed like a letter, and then a letter came and that wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, well, we really need maybe like an audio recording that says that she slept with someone else while you were married. It's like, okay. So I'm like year plus disconnected from Valerie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just hounding her. She's like, I want to move on with my life. And I'm calling her and I'm like talking. And she was like weirded out by it. And she's just like, what's going on? Because I'm trying to get this secret recording.
Mm-hmm.
And just nothing was ever good enough for Gil.
Mm-hmm.
And this went on for, gosh, it seemed like 6 to 8 months
Mm-hmm.
of him having my future to remarry one day in his hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just randomly talked to another elder. Well, so and then to backtrack a little bit, I remember one time Gil just telling me, this just may never happen, and you might think about just dedicating yourself to Jehovah in the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that as like, I think that's just deep down what he wanted.
Uh-huh.
He never wanted me to be free.
Uh,
And I loved Gil.
yeah.
Like, Gail's such a great speaker, like just amazing on the platform. Every time he spoke, the whole audience was on the edge of their seat.
Mm-hmm.
Such a wonderful speaker. It really brought you in. I just randomly talked to another brother one day about it, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like the Gil stuff? We've been working on this for 8 months." And in my mind, I thought, "Oh, well, they have their elders meetings. He's bringing it up in the
Uh-huh.
elders meetings. They're kind of talking about my case, you
Ah.
know." They had no idea. They had no idea. He was just doing his own thing with me. And it was like, "Wait, what?"
Crazy.
And they're like, "You don't need any of that."
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. So what ended up happening with Gil is basically the entire elder body of Moon Valley basically ousted him.
Oh.
That's why he moved halls. So, he did this horrible thing to me, in my opinion, personally, and they basically just wanted to hush it up and kinda ship him out to another hall,
Mm.
and that was it. And so I'm really conflicted, about the whole thing. It's like, dude, if a one elder can go kinda rogue and do this thing about this, like, what can they do? They do shit whatever shit they want all the time.
Well, that's interesting because so I had a very similar experience when I moved out here. I had whatever, what are they called? The coordinators, I guess, is that what they're called now?
The Kobe, the coordinator of the body of elders.
The main elder,
Yeah.
the big dog.
Yeah.
Um, so when I first moved out here, he was like, he was I thought he was awesome. He was like, he totally, on my side because with David's case, kind of the same thing. We don't know the protocol of what's supposed to happen with all of that and elders and stuff. So he was like, well, what do you mean they're just going to, what do they call it, publicly reprove him or whatever? Did they ask you any questions? Did they meet with you and ask your side of the story? And I'm like, no, I haven't heard from anybody. He's like, well, that's not right. So you need to call your elders and tell them that they need to ask you your side of the story. So I'm like, oh my God, I do. Okay. So I called, whatever elders were over there. And Brother Mayhem was like, nope, 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 he's wrong. Sorry, we handled it right. This is not how it goes. And I'm like, okay. So then I told that brother that. And then he's like, now you need to call the circuit overseer from over there and you need to tell him what they're doing. So I whatever, get a number for the circuit overseer over there. I call him. For people who don't know, the circuit overseer is like over a bunch of congregations and he's the main guy. He yells at me over the phone
Oh my
and he's like,
god.
how did you get my number? You're not supposed to be calling. And I'm like, I so sorry. I'm like, I don't know. This is what this elder over here is telling me I need to do. So it turned into this whole thing. And then I have no idea what was said about me. I know that probably a bunch of lies were spun around about me out there via David, I'm sure. And all of a sudden, then that elder and that hall started treating me really badly. And it was just like, so I have no idea. But I just know that I was caught in this web of what should and shouldn't be happening. And I didn't know. And I was doing what he told me to do. And everybody else over there was mad at me. So I think that was like when I was really like, what am I even doing? I am still kind of doing this.
Yeah.
I kind of believe, but I'm still mostly doing it for my parents. And so I moved out of my parents' house and moved in with a roommate out here because I was like, I just need to free myself from all of this and just kind of clear my mind and see what it is that I really want, what it is I really believe.
Yeah.
And that was huge for me because then that was my spin-off of really diving deep into new information and getting
It's so wild because even if you never truly believe like you state, and I've come to grips that like I never believed either. I always had doubts. I was always on the fringe. I never wanted to climb the ladder.
Yep.
You start to get enough distance from it and you're like, well, I don't care about
Yeah.
any of this stuff. But that's the world we knew.
Yeah.
And so you work within the framework of what you know, even if you're like have doubts. And it's just so interesting that you've moved all the way, into another state, and you're still like trying to get in touch with these elders, and but you see the cracks. These are just a bunch of men that are just trying to exert control and kind of do it in their way, and it's like how is there one rule and policy one way, and then like there's a definitive nope, that's not it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like, isn't this supposed to be a unified organization, run by God and
Yeah.
Jesus or whatever, and it's just not.
Well, and for me, because I did always have doubts, and I've always with the right people. So like again, with me and Gil, we'd go out in service or whatever, and I'd bring up all these things that I just wasn't like with the Bible. I mean, the Bible always bothered me. And I'd bring up all these things, and he'd be like, "So tell me, what's a better way to live then? If you don't have this, then what would you be doing?" And I just remember telling him, I'd be free. I'd be thinking what I want to think and I would be an authentic version of myself. I wouldn't be sitting here pondering all these questions and doing all these activities that don't feel right to me. And to me, that was more important.
And being out in service in 120-degree heat in
Yeah.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
Uh,
Trying to teach people something that I don't even believe in to begin with.
well,
Yeah.
well, I did want to ask you that question. So, obviously, you have a definitive version of what your faith looks like now, but can you remember back then of just internally what you felt like a vision of what your kind of independent faith would have been?
Yeah. I think that I always knew that I did not believe in a God that would judge and kill other people. I knew that. So I knew that if I believed in God, which I did, that it was a loving God. And it was just that. It was a God that loved us and a God that you didn't have to be afraid of. So that's what I knew I believed in my heart, but everything that I was taught was opposite of that. And that's what I couldn't come to terms with. So it was like, I just wanted to worship and pray to a God that I knew was loving and that I knew loved me. And that was the bottom line,
Yeah.
kind of back then.
So an internal seed that was waiting to sprout.
Oh, yeah.
But I do find it confusing when you say that because we were always taught that God is love.
And herein lies the problem, right? I'm like,
Whatever do you
day
mean?
one in the Bible. It was just like, wait, what? I'm sorry. These perfect beings that you sent down here, and the minute that first of all, how could you create a being that was going to come out down here and deceive these people anyway? How did you ever let that happen? And then these poor souls that you created, that you let them be tricked, and then you were going to kill them and all their offspring. So literally from day one in the Bible, I was just like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, this fairy tale version
Yeah.
of this God is a monster.
Yeah. Old Testament, New Testament, to me doesn't matter. Obviously things get a little lighter in the New Testament, but still too many things in there that I was just like, that's not love. It's not loving.
Yeah. So at this point, you're still with David.
Hmm.
You're kind of thinking these thoughts. You're chatting with Gil.
Yeah.
But you teased it a little bit. You split with David. So what's kind of that story that you can kind of recap that era of your life just for the listener?
Yeah. So, we had what I thought was a really good relationship. And in a lot of ways, we did. I mean, we laughed our asses off. We did. We had a lot of fun. Also, we had a lot of really good in depth conversations. He was very good at, having those deeper conversations. So, in a lot of ways, it was very fulfilling. But there was always this heaviness too, his stuff that he dealt with, his struggles, not only physically but mentally. And there was always, little things that happened here and there where it was like, that's not cool, that's not cool, that's not cool. But nothing that I couldn't get past, I guess. Although I will rewind, in the beginning of our relationship, something did happen that I was going to leave him that was pretty major. And the elder sat me down, just kind of like what you're saying. Well, was it actual fornication? And I'm like, well, no, I guess not actual, but it was still him being unfaithful. And they're like, sorry, you can't leave him. This is like 6 months into our marriage. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm stuck in this. So I stayed. So yeah, towards the end, it just got, he was talking to his high school sweetheart, which he told me. And I was pissed. Obviously, I was not happy. And not that I was a saint in the beginning of our marriage. I was not. But for the 10 years after, we both did some stuff after that first hurt. We kind of were on this trajectory of just kind of like partying, having fun. And not at the time he ever said I did anything to hurt him, but it's nothing I would ever do in my marriage now. So yeah, I was pissed when he came out and told me he was having this online relationship. And instead of him apologizing and saying I'm sorry, it was like, well, you just need to forgive me. We're best friends. You just need to forgive me. And there was never an apology. And I just told him, I said, you should be groveling right now. This should be your absolute, I'm so sorry. How can we? And there was none of that. And so because I wasn't allowing myself to be manipulated by him, he got very, very angry. So it got really toxic, really, really heavy, really bad, really fast. So I ended up coming out here with my parents in California and staying a couple weeks, and seemed like maybe things were going to be able to be worked out. So I came home. Things got even worse. So then because they were worse, things were kind of scary. I came back out here, and that's when he ended up, really cheating on me, and with a family member. So that got really, really, I was like, okay, there's no coming back from that. But, it was just hindsight, though, and this is what going into a little bit of what I believe now. First of all, I 100% forgive him and all involved. I don't, it's not something I think about or care about. I feel like that was something that I agreed to before I came down. And that might be a little weird for people to hear now, but I do think that we agree to things for our soul's evolution in this lifetime or in all of our lifetimes. And I think that that was something that me and David in the spirit realm were said, listen, this is what's going to happen. And if it wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here now. Who knows? Would I still be faking it? I don't know. Maybe. I definitely wouldn't be having the fulfilling spiritual or have my child or, be married to a beautiful man now. So it
Yeah, it's definitely a catalyst.
it was huge. It was what spurned me on to leaving and my awakening. And yeah, I think that that was something that just absolutely needed to happen. And I'm grateful for it, to be honest.
Yeah, it I don't know, I mean, that's great to hear, and we're gonna dive more into some of this other stuff here, pretty soon, but it's so hard in the moment. I mean, you're going through some tough shit, you're leaving, a marriage, you're leaving a friend, someone you have a connection with, a partner, you're leaving connections you have back in Arizona, and it's like, you know, we lost you as a friend. It's really difficult the way that the witnesses love to frame sides. You don't you
Can we talk about the funny message that you left
Oh,
me?
yeah, we can talk about it. You just you just don't really know what fully is going on. You just know, like, something isn't right, and this person has
Yes.
left, and they're leaving the
Yeah.
quote, unquote, "the truth."
You're right.
And, yeah, so I just remember I didn't know the full story of you and David,
Mhm.
but I just remember, like, "Oh, it sucks. It seems like she's going away from the Jehovah's Witness faith."
Yeah.
And I remember talking with my ex at the time, and, she really, missed you as a friend, and she said, "Well, maybe we should text her."
Oh,
And I think it came from a good place, but you look back at it now,
100%.
and it's like, gosh, it's so manipulative. She had the playbook of the witnesses was in the back of her mind, whether or not she kinda knew what tool she was using, but, yeah, we knew you loved animals. You had a love for animals, and so we said we basically texted you and said, "We really want you back. When you get to the new system of things, you're gonna have an opportunity to play with animals all the time." Um,
I don't even remember that message. I just remember the message you sent me over Messenger after I was with Shane and was posting pictures of me and Shane. And you sent me this message that was like, I see that you're with this worldly man now, and you're living with this worldly man. And I just want you to know that if you continue doing this, we can't be friends anymore. And I don't think we had talked in like 3 years.
that's hilarious. Yeah.
And I just remember reading it and being like, oh,
Mm,
and just like,
well,
I didn't respond because I was like, okay.
yeah, it's like
But then you sent me a really nice message, like whatever, a year or two later, when you're like, I'm sorry I ever sent that message. I have also left. And it was just like, oh wow, okay, so he's left too. But I just remember thinking that was so funny.
I think about those years where, my brain was really, fracturing,
Mhm,
because
mhm,
half of my brain was, "These are the things I should be saying and doing,"
mhm.
and then I'm saying and doing those, and then privately, I'm thinking, "This doesn't seem right," and I'm in 2 worlds, and it was
Yeah.
very difficult. The funny ongoing theme of the podcast that Trent and I keep talking about is our beard conversation, because, he was
Yeah.
starting to kind of go away, and he was growing a beard, and I remember chatting with him and saying, "Hey, this ain't right." And that was a catalyst for him, the final stretch, like, yeah, even a good friend of mine is telling me I can't have this beard, and he ended up moving away to Texas. But it's like it's similar stuff. It's like, Erica's a good buddy, a good friend. but it's like you have these indoctrinations where it's like, I think I need to say this and kind of say my piece.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
um, and it's like everyone, there's nothing you can do to wake someone up.
Yeah, for sure.
You just have to take it and go like, I hope, down the road that they will find a way out of this, cavern that they're in and get out, and then, I'll be here waiting for them.
Yeah. That's exactly the approach I've used. I've never tried to reach out to anybody or even, sway anybody in their beliefs, because I'm just like, again, for me, I believe everything is divine orchestration. I think that some people are meant to stay in this. I think that that is what they're supposed to do in this lifetime. And for whatever reason, they're supposed to stay in this cult or this high control group because that's what their soul needed to experience in this lifetime and work out in this lifetime. It doesn't matter. Nobody's being judged for anything on the other end, when we go to the great beyond. I just think like that's okay. If this is what they're doing, then let them be. And if they end up having that awakening or that realization, then I'm here for them. Great, and I'm happy for them. But it's not my job to try and change anybody.
Yeah, and that's the ironic thing is, now granted, I do believe that there's kind of different levels of people that come out of these things. Not, we speak of Jehovah's Witnesses because that's what we're familiar with, but any of these cults or high control groups, that it's kind of the similar playbook. But some people come out and they're like, I'm going to be an apostate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say things. And it's like, I've never had anger for anyone. I've educated myself well enough to know what happened and what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like you start to have some empathy for people that are kind of still sheep and kind of stuck in a cycle that they have no control over of. But yeah, I'm really grateful to be out and grateful to reconnect with you. David, as I start sending my messages out to everyone, and who knows? I'm sure he'll eventually hear this podcast, which is whatever. But he was a good friend of mine, and he was the nastiest person to me.
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt it.
Yeah, I said the nicest thing I could, just basically saying my piece, and I apologize, but I want to let you know personally that I'm gone, and here's why. And he was just so mean. I couldn't believe it. So I only have a fraction of maybe what you went through.
Yeah, yeah,
A very teeny
yeah. I
morsel.
don't think because I'm still friends with some people who are witnesses, and I don't really try and go into it, but I can tell when we've had conversations way in the past about David, like maybe they don't really believe me when I say it got really, really, really bad, really ugly, really scary for me because not many people saw that side of David.
Yeah, David very much presents as a happy-go-lucky guy. He has a
Hmm.
very personality that draws people in.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, oh, he knows what he's doing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you're away from the David era and you've moved on, and from what I can see, your current partner in your current life just seems really great. And that's a really good place to be. And when you start to have space for yourself where you can allow yourself to, I don't know, open your mind to things, that's when it really starts to get pretty great.
Hmm.
When you're not constantly fight or flight, dealing with friction, dealing with problems. Um, and it seems like with the current life that you have for yourself, that you've allowed yourselves to dive into kind of a new mindset. And you've said some things in the conversation before. And I do want to start to kind of dive into that. I do preface it like, I'm well enough to know, and I know that you are as well, that it's very easy for someone to start talking about a subject or kind of a way a subject is proposed and immediately to shut down
Hmm. Hmm.
and go like, I don't align with what's being said, and so therefore blah blah
Hmm.
blah. And we were taught to do that. We were taught to the moment something is stated that our brains don't align with, our brains need to preserve
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, anyone who's listening, as you start to kind of dive into where you're at with your new spirituality, I feel that's really important to have an open mind about everything. I've said it before. We've lost our curiosity.
Hmm.
I think this current societal structure, not even necessarily the witnesses, just beats that out of us. And I'm so grateful that you have found your form of spirituality. And so I do want to dive into that. Tell me kind of your journey from leaving the witnesses.
Hmm.
And I know it's easy to get to the end. You know, it's really easy to get to the end, right? You're like, this is where I'm at now, and this is what I want to talk about. But I would actually love to hear the process to get to where you're at now.
Sure. Um, yeah, I would say that when I moved in, I moved in with my parents out here for a couple years, and then I ended up moving in with a roommate when I knew I was going to leave the organization, who had no affiliation with witnesses, and we just had the best little time. We lived basically right on the beach, and we had our this rad beach cottage, and I just started reading kind of like self-help books and kind of going down that route. And then me and Shane met a couple years after I moved out here, and we moved in an apartment by the beach. And I started just getting these weird, like, anxiety or panic attacks, kind of like I used to in my early 20s. And I stumbled across a Joe Dispenza book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Um, and for me, it was rad because it's very much science based. So it very much just goes into. So he's a quantum physicist and neuroscientist, and so it goes into really the science behind the brain and how you can rewire it, and really it's through meditation. But he spoke to me in a way that I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. So it kind of started there for me, and I started doing his meditations, and then I came across, which was really what helped me honestly the most at that point, which was The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And that book completely changed me. Really, it takes you into just being the observer of your reality instead of being caught up in your reality. So if you can take a step back and realize there's something inside of you that is observing these things that are happening, these emotions, these things, and kind of letting them pass through you instead of being caught up in them. And he goes just through so many great metaphors, and the way he explained things, I really was able to see things that way instead of seeing maybe like a car like your ex drives and letting that trigger you. Instead, you just see it as interesting, realize that it triggers you, and just let that moment pass. So that was huge for me, and I stopped having anxiety and panic attacks because I was able to see things completely differently instead of getting caught up in those emotions and that story.
So you read and you felt like it was an instant alignment.
Instant, like this, like I already knew it, but I had never in this life I'd never been presented with this information, or but yeah, I immediately was like, yes, 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 full body, yes, this is absolutely how you do things. This is what makes sense to me, and I practiced the things that I read, and it changed my life.
What does the practice look like for, and then kind of explain a little bit about, I mean, what I know is I'm very curious and I love hearing about these things, but I don't know what that means. What
Yeah.
does a practice mean when it comes to, I mean, my practice of spirituality is going to meetings Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, and constantly reading material just to stay in the
uh,
loop. So what does that mean?
yeah, yeah. Well, so back then it wasn't really a spiritual practice. It was just I read these things that allowed me to rewire my brain, to see things differently. With Joe Dispenza, it's about yes, through meditation. So then you're freeing yourself from the predictable past, or the future, and you're in the present now, and you're entering this void, and you're opening yourself to the quantum field, all this stuff. So that is very, like, that's a little more down the line. Maybe that's not for beginners, but because you can have a healing experience, you can have a mystical experience, you can have any experience you want when you enter that field, because we're multidimensional beings. So we can there's a version of me that's probably still a witness. There's a version of me that's, doing something grander than what I'm doing now. So it's tapping into those timelines and those other frequencies. But at that time, like I said, it wasn't a spiritual
Mm.
practice. That's something that through 8 years now of studying this, now I do. For me, it's different. Yes, my meditations are different. They're more sacred. It's more of a ritual. I am connected to my guides. But it took many, many books and many meditations and
Yeah.
YouTubes
Yeah.
later.
YouTube's. Uh, I think meditation is so great. Our brains were going. It's on autopilot. And if you don't take time to just stop and get the noise out and really focus on intention, it's hard to get to some of
Yeah.
these places. And I do believe that's a
Yeah.
good first step. And I'm really fascinated. I'm going to look into both of these books. um yeah, I just think it's really great. So no apprehension, you're finding this kind of new path. um do you find that you align with your partner on this?
Yeah, so he just lets me be crazy and do whatever I want.
Okay.
He was not raised religious at all. So he has no preconditioning. He doesn't have to be deprogrammed in any way. He's just like, well, yeah, like, yeah. And maybe he's not diving into some of these deeper things like for me, it is very much like I have a spiritual need that needs to be filled. And for me now, a lot of my spiritual stuff goes back to ancient texts and the way the ancients used to do it with breath work, with sun gazing, with all these different things, that we didn't learn about, but that other cultures have learned about for thousands of years. But he's rad because he's open. And if I ask him, hey, you want to do a meditation or do you want to read this book? He's open to it, but I'm also not pressuring him.
Yeah.
He's his own dude on his own path. And if he has a spiritual calling to dive deeper, cool. If not, then I don't need him to. I don't need him to sit there and like do all these things with me.
Yeah,
So we're just very much like we let each other do our own thing, which is I think the way it's
it
it's
should
supposed
be.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very much not how we were raised.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I think that my feeling about relationships is you are two separate entities that combine to make a third.
Hmm.
And that third is something you're constantly working on while you work on maintaining your own separate entity. And so it's like you have to allow that person to be on their own journey while still crossing paths with your own, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But in terms of journey beliefs, so you've done this for 8+ years. Can you maybe describe what your practices and beliefs are now that help you feel connected? Like what does your spirituality look like on a day to day basis?
Yeah. Good question. So I believe that we are all connected by a loving creator, and I don't feel like it's a man in the sky. I feel like it very much looks like the intelligence behind the quantum field. It is just this energy that creates, and it is out of love, but it's also constantly trying to observe itself. So all these different things that we see are just different faces of the creator. So some things even that we may see as bad or evil, and in some ways, like certain things obviously are to us, but it's just the creator is observing these things as different aspects of itself. So when I'm connecting every day, I'm connecting to this creator, this field of energy that is loving, then to my higher self, which I feel is the part of myself that is up there orchestrating all of this and is working hand in hand with your guides, your angels. So then I call upon my higher self, then my guides, my angels. I do energetic clearings to make sure that I'm, working with the highest vibrations, working with these aspects of myself, and then just always asking to be on my highest timeline. Can I
Mm.
always be every day? I'm asking my higher self to help me be on my highest timeline. So that's really in a nutshell what it looks like for me. I also do like my meditation, I do sacred, ritual baths where I'm in there for like 2 hours.
Okay.
And I'm in deep meditation, and I'm in these transcendent states where I'm connecting to all these other beings.
Do you use totems or anything?
So I have different guides that I'll bring in, that I have like statues of, and certain crystals, and I'll use those. But that's not always who's going to come through either. It's when you're opening yourself up like that, as long as you're asking to, I'm always asking that whoever's serving the divine white light and here for my highest good can come in. And so sometimes it's a surprise. Sometimes it's not who I'm calling on. And that's the beauty of it. And I've just had some really, really amazing, transformational experiences that way.
And when you say that, two things come to mind. When you say angels, it's not the image of what we all believe, like the Christian angel.
Yeah, for sure there's, angels that are mentioned in the Bible that are real angels, and they're loving. But they can, yeah, I mean there's billions of them. So I think that, when we talk about angels, or even people like Jesus or Buddha or any of these, I think that they are all aspects, again, of the creator, and they're all entities you can call on. They're all here for our help. These masters, like I like to call them, like Jesus, Buddha, Kuan Yin, who were had human incarnations and now are in this other field helping us. So I mean, there's an array of help that's out there, and it's just finding who you connect with. And there's people out there who can help you connect to these guides, or they may, through meditation, be some you find on your own. But they're just out here to help us.
So I guess that ties into, maybe a concept that we spoke about offline that you can kind of see of, so different in your interpretation of things, different angels or beings or entities are brought down or brought here or manifest here that hopefully align with people's kind of inner self.
Yeah, yeah. They're here to help us in our ascension journey, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get into some really weird stuff, but yeah, I feel like there is a mass awakening and ascension going on for humankind, and we
Yeah.
have been stuck in a third dimensional reality for a long time. And I think that
Let's get it. Let's get
but
into it.
I think that yeah, I think that a lot of us are moving into a fifth dimensional reality. I think the earth is literally splitting into two realities, and there's going to be a lot of people who choose to stay in this third dimension, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Everybody will ascend at some point, and for those who are ready, they can move into this new earth,
Mhm.
really, where things are just running at a much higher frequency, a much higher vibrational state, where we're not going through um, you know, these old timelines of war and, all this dissent among humans, and everybody trying to cause division. There is a higher purpose for Earth and for the inhabitants, and people can choose to stay, or if people can choose to ascend.
I think that's great. I think it's really fascinating, um, to pick anyone's brain, much less someone like yourself that has a completely different concept. And I don't even want to say concept, a completely different framework for how their spirituality manifests.
Hmm.
Because it's so different. And that's why I kind of prefaced it at the outset, is it's very easy for anyone that doesn't align with something in their own brain
Hmm.
to go, that's a fairy tale.
Hmm. Hmm.
The
For
moment
sure.
the moment you start hearing enough things that don't properly trigger in your brain or do trigger negatively, you just kind of shut down into a mindset of, that's crazy talk.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, tell that to someone before their current religion was a standard.
Hmm.
If you were to tell some core doctrinal things about Christianity or whatever, they'd be like, that's crazy.
Hmm.
And so I just really find it really fascinating. It gives me two additional questions. So you mentioned vibrations.
Hmm.
Now, my mindset about vibrations are those are things that we can feel a vibration of, say, a speaker.
Hmm.
We can touch it
Hmm.
and we can see that it's vibrating because the sound waves are emitting.
Hmm.
Is that a similar concept? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know when you feel it. So fear, guilt, shame, those are some of the lowest vibrations you can be in. And you know when you feel that, you viscerally feel that in your body. Whereas joy, love,
Mm.
those are all operating on a much higher vibration. And so in turn, you can also feel that, which is why, being indoctrinated into a cult or a high control group is keeping people stuck in these lower vibrations. And you get addicted to these chemicals in your brain. You get addicted to these vibrations. And it's very hard to come out of that loop. So when you start consciously meditating on or trying to feel these other vibrations, if you're stuck in this day where you're just like, God, I'm angry, or I feel really guilty, or I feel really, then consciously trying to pull yourself out and feeling, okay, what does joy feel like? What does happiness feel like? What does love feel like? Then you're raising your vibration. You can also in meditation, sometimes for me my body does start vibrating, my hands vibrate, so yeah, it's very much a real thing that you can feel.
One of the things I think is really fascinating, and for someone that's hasn't dove into your mindset, just very cursory on the outset, I think about how powerful music is.
Yep.
It's people don't, I guess, stop to think enough about, like, this is literally just sound waves,
Hmm.
and you hear a certain frequency or a certain tone or
Hmm.
a certain melody,
Hmm.
and you're like, oh, this feels great.
Hmm.
And then you hear something that is different, maybe harsher, maybe more aggressive, and you're like, I feel agitated.
Hmm.
And it's like, why is that? It's literally just sound waves going into your brain. Why is it that these different frequencies are creating that emotion?
Hmm.
Is that something that you understand to some extent?
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's also the beauty of being able to find a lot of these resources. Whether you look them up on Spotify or YouTube or whatever, where they have these frequencies that
I
often.
love 432. That's man, that's where it's at.
Exactly. Yeah, these different hertz, these different, which again is what the ancients knew. And in these ancient temples, even a lot of these old churches with the stained glass and the acoustics are perfect. Well, a lot of the ancient people used to go into these churches for that, for the acoustics, to raise the vibration, to raise the frequency in these rooms, and you had these sacred geometry everywhere, and that was the original purpose, and now they're used as churches and
Mm.
whatever. But this is something that the ancient temples, that the temple of Hathor, same thing. They would have the citrines and these different musical instruments in there, and it was for raising their vibration because they knew how important it was.
I love it. Those Gregorian chants are just
They're the shit.
amazing.
They're on point.
Um, my other question too was, you'd mentioned the fourth dimension and fifth dimension. I wasn't gonna not just hear that and ask, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about? Okay, so let's see if I can do any of this justice. So, third dimension is where, again, where Earth and its inhabitants have been trapped for a long time. And this is where again, the lower vibrations of war, getting people to fight against each other, whether it's in thought, physically, basically people not being in peace. This is the third dimension where we're experiencing a lot of this. And then the fifth dimension again is where you pass through the fourth, and then to the fifth is the ultimate goal, is where everything gets a lot lighter. This is where we have a lot of ET help at the moment. A lot of having a lot more UFO sightings. I myself see them all the time. We have our star family out there that's really trying to help humanity, because they're already in these other dimensions. And
there's a weird theory I heard about that is there's some sort of pact
uh-huh.
that they are not allowed to be overt.
Mhm.
They are doing what they can in the structure that they're currently
Mhm.
in. And obviously, everything could be subjective, but yeah, I do agree with you. Like Congress and different things, they're starting to come out with more alien talk, and things are starting to become redacted, and that could be a whole podcast, in and of
Yeah,
itself.
for sure. 1000%.
Um,
Yeah.
but okay, so and then what you're saying though is these other dimensions. This is a mentality or reality.
No, this is an actual reality, yeah, because there's parallel universes, different timelines. So if this is something that you're consciously seeking, the fifth dimensional reality, even the Earth itself right now is transforming. This is why too, they say in the next few years we are going to have more earthquakes, volcanoes, these disruptions, because she's kind of
Hmm.
shaking this old vibration out of her, and she's raising in frequency as well. So she's raising, we're actually being split into two realities. And so kind of like a parallel universe. So there's going to be people on this earth stuck down here doing this thing, and then there's going to be this other earth where people are living these much better lives, and it's going to be an actual reality.
And I guess again, my brain approaching things from kind of the scientific method, but being very open
Yeah.
to hearing stuff like this and learning. When that reality shift happens, uh, say it happens and we're standing next to each other, do you just disappear into another?
Um,
And I'm like, where the fuck did Erica go?
yeah, that's interesting. Like, will there be a version of me still be in the third, in the third dimension,
Yeah.
living in your reality? Yeah, it's interesting because I can tell even now, for me, yeah, maybe that's interesting. Maybe those avatars still exist in that reality and they're just kind of like, but I think for the most part, me and you could be in separate realities on this earth right now.
Oh,
Like,
we already are.
people, yeah, falling to the wayside,
Yeah.
and you start getting new friends and the old friends because you guys are no longer on the same frequency, you're no longer in the same reality.
Yep.
So I think that's mainly what it boils down to, and then yeah, you're going to have this split that occurs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I do agree with the concept of people can habit the same planet and the same Earth that we live on, and not have any idea that their framework for the reality that they have is completely different. So therefore, they are currently
Hmm.
it's like a dual reality.
Hmm.
They're inhabiting the same space we are, but their version of that space is completely different.
Completely different, completely different, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and yeah, I love exploring that stuff and really getting to the bottom of it as much as I can. We've talked briefly too. Well, you and I haven't, but just on the podcast, what the double slit experiment. Have you heard about this?
Hmm. No, I don't know, tell me.
So this is a scientific experiment that was done, and you could research it online today and see the actual.
You know what, I did just read about
Oh,
this. Okay, go ahead.
yeah. So you
Yes.
you could see the actual data, the proven
Yeah.
scientific experiment where and forgive me for whoever's a master at this that's gonna, you know,
Sorry, quantum
yeah,
physicists.
that I, messed this up, but they basically have a wall with two slits in it, and they
Uh-huh.
send sound waves through it. And
Hmm.
on the other side, there's a camera that's
Yeah.
and a sensor that's measuring those waves go through those two slits.
Yeah.
And just picture, if you saw this with water, how the ripples would happen.
Yeah.
Well, this same phenomenon is happening with these waves through
Yeah.
these slits. And when the camera's watching, they behave one way.
Yeah.
And when the camera's turned off, they
Yeah.
behave differently.
Yeah. So the book I'm reading is The Holographic Universe, and it talks about it in there, and it's the electrons that go through. and they're split into two. Yes, it's very interesting. So yeah, that's the whole basis behind quantum physics, is that, unless you're observing the electron doesn't appear. So it's like you're looking at a bowling ball, and the bowling ball is going through, like, say you have a bunch of sand on the track, and it's making this straight line. Well, if you were to take your eye off the bowling ball, all of a sudden there would be waves in the sand because it's moving, and then you put your eye back on it, and it's making that straight line again. So yeah, it's the observable. This is why, you know quantum physics are so rad,
Yeah.
because this is us creating the reality that we're looking at. So what we're observing.
Yeah, it's like you start to see stuff like that and you're like, "What the hell?"
Hmm.
And again, from someone who approaches things, with a certain logic framework, you can't deny that what's going on?
Hmm.
Uh, like you can't deny the question, and the question should
Right.
lead to a
Right.
curiosity about what potential answers could be. And going back to where we were raised, we weren't allowed to ask those questions.
Right. Right.
We were
Never.
never allowed to dive down the curiosity lane and kind of see where it takes us. Dustin, when he was just on, one of the things he said was, it sounds foolish, but it's like, what's up with these dinosaurs? And it's like, it sounds childish or whatever, like, but it's like, no, like it doesn't align with
Right.
the story we were told.
Right. 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 Right.
And so it's like, yeah, you should have that curiosity to go like, this doesn't connect, this doesn't make sense.
Or any pre-human, any Neanderthal, anything like that. This is the thing, is that anything that is in this realm is demons, right? Aliens, demons. Cavemen, demons. Quantum physics, demons. Because it's
Satan.
yeah, it's like anything that God didn't put in the Bible, which really, what was put in the Bible, a lot of things were left out and a lot of things were tweaked, that it was demonic. Well, Satan's trying to mislead you. That's why there's UFOs. Well, Satan's trying to mislead you. That's why there's pre-human,
Yeah.
skeletons. It's just like so silly and so um yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it if you allow your brain to really get there, you constantly go like this I don't know, man. And it's unfortunate, that so many people just they go to the books that they gave us, they don't find the answers, or they find just enough to go like, I guess, and then they kind of get back to the routine. But for anyone that has gotten to the point where they're out, there's also a mindset where like, what one of the things I've said already, but it's like I don't want to always be just an XJW.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if this is the one life we have to live in this world, you want to be identified with your past life.
Hmm.
And it's like, which is ironic because I dive back into this space, but I think it's important to provide this space for people to have conversations like we're having,
Yeah.
because we weren't free to do so.
Right.
I mean, an
Right.
entire time I knew you, we've never talked like this.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about video games a lot. That was cool. I do miss
Yeah.
playing Gears of War until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Those, I mean, don't get me wrong, those were fun times. But it's like
But there was no substance.
this shit was always in this was always in me to
Yeah.
have these conversations.
Right.
You just never felt free to do so. And so I just think it's great for anyone that's out, or maybe, there's just, secret curious people that are listening.
Yeah.
And it's like, just allow yourself to be curious. Like you're not really going to be hurt for being curious.
Yeah, and I think that's why, I'm glad that we've mentioned Joe Dispenza, or in even the book, like I said, now the holographic universe. They're great because they'll dive into some of the mysticism, but it's going to be very, very, very. It's all science, and it's all science, and it's all factual. Um, so if you're somebody who's like, I need cold hard facts, I need it to be science based, that's where you start, because really these are the pioneers of this field. And 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if we want to, even in Einstein, when Einstein was around, they were discovering quantum physics, and it was very much like, whoa, this is too weird. You know, this is not how the universe as we know it, because we need it to be in like reality. And the truth is what is reality? You know, I think it's a lot weirder than we think it is. And I think that's awesome. And why wouldn't you want to just like open your mind and explore?
Yeah, one of the most recent fascinations for me was, the telepathy tapes.
I haven't listened to them yet, but I've heard about them. Yes.
It's very fascinating. I've gotten through some of the podcasts with my partner, and there's a connection between, autistic ones, where they can speak telepathically,
Yep.
and and it's proven.
Yep.
This is not
Yep.
this is not fringe things with no data. This is exactly what we were talking about, is like
Yep.
they have interviews with people that don't know each other, and they also talk about, um, I don't remember the exact word, but they basically, these ones meet on the field,
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we can travel to this place and all hang out."
Yeah.
And it's, again, it's not an isolated case. It's people from across the country that have never spoken to each other, and
Yeah.
in, this reality that we're in now, they're in this different plane, and it's like,
Yep.
how is that possible?
I know. It's so
Uh,
cool.
so, for people that are listening that are like, what, the hell is going on? Just look into some of this stuff, and, I'd say challenge yourself, to these different topics, and just see where you align with, and just be curious. Maybe challenge yourself to, this field of topics, and then, like, it's so funny. It's like, Trent's talked about in the past the Satanic Bible,
Uh-huh.
and it's like, okay, read it.
Uh-huh.
Just see
Right.
if we were taught, oh my gosh, it's so
Yeah.
evil, it's so satanic, we're gonna,
Yeah.
it's like, just read it. Either
Yeah.
you align with it or you don't. You're gonna
Right.
find what you align with, and it's so awesome to hear that this is kind of on the path you're now. And I'm gonna hold you to it in about 3 months or so. If I don't get into the fifth dimension, I'm gonna be upset at you. But okay, so just to kind of close out here, is there maybe any topics maybe we didn't address, like things you felt is really important kind of on your journey that maybe we skipped over, or just any kind of messages to anyone who's listening that you think we should touch on?
um, I would say I just want people to know that it doesn't have your spiritual any journey doesn't have to end with how you were raised. You know, like you were saying, just be open. You can have a very rich, more fulfilling spiritual life than you ever had when you were being taught how to think. Then just opening yourself up, doing, it's out there. If you're willing to connect, it's willing to connect to you, whatever that is to you, and there's no good, there's no bad, there's nobody judging you. Just if you feel like you need that spiritual connection, just start researching, or just start reading, just whatever, start meditating, start there. Breath work, even breath work takes people into crazy states of being. So yeah, I just want people to not be so closed off or bitter or angry or caught in this loop or victimhood, because there's so much more out there than your story. It can be so much better than that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that it's great when people can find their path. It's really great when you just feel that they are so aligned with where they want to be and what they're doing. And some people are on a different phase in their journey. They're at a different kind of timeline, and whether they're in front of us or behind us, but eventually, hopefully everyone can kind of get to a point where they're on the right path for themselves, and not kind of just get rid of the noise. Just
Yeah.
be truly authentically who you want to be and what makes you feel good, and maybe purpose, or whatever word you want to use. And yeah, it just sounds like you got there. So I'm so proud and happy, and it's great, that we were able to reconnect. And I look forward to whatever new insights you can send my way, and I just think it's great. So, Erica, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you ever want to come back on, you're always invited. And for the audience listeners, if they want to get in touch with you, I believe you have a private account, but you can kind of put yourself out there if maybe they have specific questions they want to tap you on.
Yeah. So yeah, my Instagram handle is ERI period KAT period Rose. Yeah, so yeah, feel free. You guys can definitely request me, DM me with any questions. I will start an energy healing practice here in the next year or so. Kind of spiritual coaching, mentorship, just helping people get in that zone, in that space if they want to, if that's something that
Mhm.
they're wanting or feeling drawn to. I'm just here to help.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great. Well, thank you so much for just speaking on just a portion of your journey,
Yeah.
and I really look forward to kind of seeing where all your kind of new goals and things are, and I'll keep checking in with you, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for joining us on this journey in this era. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with someone who might need it. Check the podcast description for our socials and other information.
Please consider supporting us at Patreon at patreon.com/culturepod. If you'd like to tell your story, please contact us at cult.chur.pod@gmail.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay free.